Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another video. So yesterday, I told you I thought Bitcoin would maybe have a little bit of a short-term rally. Today, we've woken up to a little bit of green. I do still think this is short-term. We're going to discuss where I think you should position yourself and how I think you should position yourself right now. What I think comes next for Bitcoin and what I think comes next for altcoins. And I'm going to show you a few different perspectives that I don't think many people are talking about, or not at least many people in the crypto space. As to why I think these things. So let me just actually touch on Bitcoin, then I'm going to get into the S&P, then I'm going to have a literal quick touch on gold and link those things together as well. And we're going to look at the DXY and some altcoins, including leverage and liquidity pools after that as well. So first off, we've got Bitcoin. I'll just take us into the daily. Bitcoin's holding pretty strong throughout this period of uncertainty around the world. We are holding up at 105,000 during one of the most volatile geopolitical events that we've seen in a long time. So that breeds strength to me for the longer term. However, I do still think we have a back test of this area, and I'm just going to get into why I think that is. I think that this rally today, this green, could take Bitcoin into this liquidity here. I think if we do that, it's going to be much more tricky for myself and for everyone else to work out what's happening next. Because when you start to get into these liquidity areas, when you can squeeze these out, and that can take us higher and higher, and then that will catch me not off guard, because this is a point I'm going to make in 1 second. When you start to get in these areas, you're going to start to squeeze this liquidity, and it could then cascade to the upside as we talk about. But I personally don't think we're quite there. But before I get into all of that and explaining why I think that this is just like a bit of a relief rally on a downside push, I'm just going to say to you guys that what we're talking about here, this short-term correction is just that. It's not for anyone to reposition their whole portfolio. Oh, I'm going to sell XRP at 219 and try and catch it at 180. It's the absolute opposite of that. That's what I want to make super, super clear, because the short term is a really hard part to try and get right. The long term, I'm 80 to 90% sure that we have a parabolic rise at some point when we've worked this range out. What I'm trying to do now is trying to get that 10% and understand, well, in the last little fraction of what we've got left, if we've got any cash left in our portfolio, where are we going to bid to try and maximize our portfolio in spot? Where are we going to bid if we want to try and catch some leverage trades? That's it. The rest of it, my spot bag's all sitting there. I'm like 97% long right now, with 3% in stables. 2% of that I've got to live off. I've got 1% left to play with. That's pretty much where I am right now. And that's where I hope you guys are too, because from January all the way through to April probably, I just screamed, buy the fucking dip. We talked about it on any bloody altcoin. I showed you some different ones I was buying, like ENA, CRV. We talked about even XRP, ETH. I said, buy whatever you want to buy it in this period. And I came on to YouTube every day and I said, buy. While everyone said, oh, we're going lower. Just fucking buy the dip. That's all you had to do to start with. And now we're at 106k Bitcoin, and it's more complicated. Yes, I do think in the short term we're going to have a little dip. So I hope that resonates with you. And if it doesn't, and if you're in the position where, shit, I've sold my bag, I thought we were going to come lower, I thought that's what he was trying to say. No, one, never fucking do anything completely on what I say. It's just to put into your repertoire of what could happen next. Two, if you are in that position, again, time to be allocating. If you've got out the game, or you've got more cash than you thought, DCAing from here is a good thing to do. Because I could be wrong on the next dip, but I do think we dip. So for me personally, I've got that 1% left, and this is how I'm going to play that 1%, okay? And why I'm going to play that 1% like that. In the newsletter, I wrote about my targets. I don't want to keep having to talk about them. The liquidity pools are still there for ETH, XRP. I think Bitcoin comes down to 97k. They're the areas I'm going to be buying-ish. And if Bitcoin's at 97k, whatever else are at, at that point, I'm going to start allocating my last 1%. And I've got bids set already. Bids in XRP for 192, 185, 180 for leverage positions. Low leverage, so because the wicks could come further down if we get this a cascade and stop loss sort of thing. That's what I think we're going to probably see before we see a move up. Probably. Okay. So let's look at why. So let's go on the weekly, and then I'm going to show you a few reasons as to why the macro, I think, is lining up a little bit for that. The only thing that's really like not concerning me but making me think how can we get there is the narrative this week has been the worst narrative that we've seen for a long time and still hasn't managed to get us this flush. So I'm thinking, what can possibly come narrative-wise that could get us the flush? And I'm thinking maybe US joins in with the Middle East war, or China, or Russia. That's the way that I could think the narrative could get worse, and then people would panic, and then we will probably see a short-term flush, something like along those lines. But what else am I seeing? So technically, gold has had the highest weekly close ever. I've been looking for a short-term pullback in gold. Essentially, all we got was a chop. I've been looking for a short-term pullback, not because I don't think gold will go up in the long term, because I do. I think we're going to go to 10K in gold. I said that when we broke out of 2000. I released charts over on X. You can literally search for them, saying, look, probably over the next 4 years, we'll be at $10,000 in gold. And I didn't think it would be, it seemed impossible from like a logical perspective, but it looks more logical now. But just talking about gold, the highest ever close in gold this week. What does that mean? Well, that means that like people are uncertain, obviously. People are trying to protect wealth. And in turn, I do think that that means that even though we've had the trade deal sorted between the US and China, or at least paused, I think that that means we probably have a little bit of a short-term pullback in the S&P, maybe this week. I think that this gap here potentially is closed in the S&P, and I think that that would line up pretty much with what I think is going to come in crypto. I think we're going to have a short-term pullback, flush out a few long positions. People who have been who missed the bottom, they're like, shit, we're going to break out to all-time highs. Better get long. Hedge funds under pressure. Go long. Get squeezed short to the short side, and then we pop off to the upside for the S&P. That's what I'm looking at. I think gold's kind of telling us that a little bit as well. The fact that it's rallying, it's saying, look, there's probably a little bit of a short-term pullback in stocks as people still aren't sure as to what's going on. But yeah, that's basically what I think in the like gold and equity side of things. And then that relates and translates over to crypto. One token that I've been trading a lot, we talked about, I've been shorting it, is Mudang. We've talked about this. I've been short on Mudang. I actually closed a short down here yesterday when I made that video. I said, look, I think that we're going to have across the board on alts a bit of a relief rally. We're getting it. This is Solana, for example. But nothing's really changed. It doesn't change the structure. It's just moved after dumping aggressively. It's just moved back up. And in that move, we've had more volume on the downside than we have yet to the upside. We're running out of steam. The RSI is nearly in the overbought area. The stochastics in the overbought area. It's on the hourly. The 4 hour is pretty similar. The 4 hour RSI is getting up towards the overbought area. The stochastic is bearish crossing in the overbought. This is the same story across like many altcoins. ETH is the same look. The thing that's going to confuse people and why I could be wrong is that we are holding a nice range here, making slightly higher highs, holding the middle of the range, maybe going to go for the highs again. But I do think we come down to test these liquidity levels. Now, this is Bitcoin. As I've been saying, we've been building liquidity above us. This is kind of looking more bullish. However, all we've really done is closed this gap between the recent drop. But this liquidity above us, what I made the video about yesterday, could come and get taken. But I do think that this downside liquidity will be taken here. And it is starting to build below us, all the way to 93K. I don't think it probably comes there. I probably think it comes to about 97. It could come as low as 93, and that would be a big flush into altcoins. If we look at ETH, I'll show you the same liquidity is still there. The liquidity is mostly below us. As you can see, it's quite clear in this chart with that big gap. I mean, the big drop as a candle. We've basically closed that gap. If you haven't watched Credible Crypto's video, I think you should. Corrective moves are moves of 3. They can also be 1-2s. It can be 1-2, 1-2. But you can also, mainly corrective moves are a three wave moves, and people call them ABCs, but it's not necessarily an ABC if it's more complex, which is what he talks about. They can be XYZs or YXZs. Essentially, and that doesn't matter about the terminology, but they're moves of 3. So three moves after 5 impulsive waves. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you normally see 3s, and then 5 for impulsive. Whichever way that might be, you can get 5 waves of impulsive moves downwards as well. So this is what I'm saying. This could be just a 3 corrective move. That's as simple as it could be, after seeing some other 3s in here. So that could be a 3 there. Do you know what I mean? So this is what we're looking at. We're just looking at 3s, 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 and 3s and 2s. And 5's where you start to see impulsive moves. Okay, so that's ETH. ETH has liquidity below us. That's the point. The point is the liquidity is below us. This doesn't look strong. This move down looks stronger, and I can show you exactly why I think that, because if we look back at when like ETH increases in price, look at the strength and the difference of this move. It's essentially a straight line up compared to what we're doing here. Here, yes, we could argue this is a bit more aggressive, which is better. But I do think with the lack of volume compared to on the selling, whenever we get selling, we get a lot more volume. Look, I do think that liquidity below us is still in play. When we moved up here and got really aggressive, yes, it did come into these volume areas, and that's where you start to see the volume. Into these liquidity areas, that's where you start to see the volume. But look at the difference in structure in the moves to the upside compared to this move now. It can develop into that. That's why I was saying it can get complicated, especially if Bitcoin gets into that liquidity, because you could really start to see that squeeze, and then it doesn't have to take the liquidity below us, but I think it will. That's basically where that's what I think essentially across ETH, for example. And now we'll look at XRP. Very similar for XRP here. Let's just get rid of this. Very similar. The dense liquidity is below us. There is liquidity building above us. I would prefer we come first down before we go up, because then we've done the downside part. Otherwise, I'm still going to be worried about going down, even if we come up to 142, maybe even higher, 242, sorry, maybe even higher up to 250. It's possible before then taking the liquidity below us. If we came down and just took this first, that would be lovely. But again, it's very, very similar story. Let's show you. I'm going to take you back actually just to the normal XRP chart and show you something else for XRP that I haven't discussed for a while. This XRP has been forming this inverse head and shoulders that I talked about on Twitter literally ages ago. Like when we're at this point here, I talked about that back in the 14th of May. I've seen other people copying this chart, and I still think it comes down to make the right shoulder, which is around 188. It doesn't have to be exactly there, but ish. And I'm just going to take all my drawings off just so I can show you the structures of this move. Actually, let's just see if I can do it on here. See what I've got any drawings on here. Okay, cool. We don't have much here. But as you can see, again, let's take XRP. It was on the 4 hour here. We have like choppy moves, all corrective, all this down here. But then when we start to get that breakout, look how aggressive that move is. And that's what we're looking for on this next break. Yes, and it does start like chop. But look what happened before the chop. You have a move down. You could like sort of consolidate upwards, and you have that one more flush, tap the lows, and off we go. That's what I would like to see here for XRP, genuinely. So we've had so far we've had this in the short term. What we've had is this move down, sort of like a choppy move back up. I'd love to flush the lows, tap in there, and send it. That's basically what I want to see. We want to see price action get aggressive like this. It's the same with Bitcoin. It's all choppy price action until it's more aggressive. Let's just take this off for a second so I can show you. When we get the breakouts, you can see that they happen mostly on like big, long, aggressive pushes. Most of Bitcoin's moves to the upside happen on aggressive pushes, and then we consolidate for a while. Most of them happen on aggressive pushes, and then this is like upwards vertical consolidation, more consolidation, aggressive move, consolidation, aggressive move, consolidation, and we're in that consolidation still now. I do think we've got a more aggressive move to come. This is just like short-term consolidation after an aggressive move from the lows. Consolidation, flush of the lows, boom, off we go. I do think, as I said, like it comes down to that 97k. I'll put my drawings back on there for you now. If it's going to load, I can redraw it in. If it's not going to, just Control Z in it. There we go. It does feel like to me that we do come back into this area, retest that 97, build that base, and actually then we send it to much higher zones. I'd like to see that. that's basically what I think for the whole markets. I think Bitcoin dominance is tricky right now. I don't really know where I stand with that. So if we take us to the 3-day look, what we can see is we've had a 3-day close above the 786. That's exactly the same with the weekly. Let's have a look. Above the 786, look, the weekly close above the 786. This indicates that we should realistically go to the reset, to go to set new all-time highs, which I wouldn't be unhappy with. I do think that Bitcoin could come into this previous alt season start box. It's not very accurate. Let's just show you this. Should be in here, just showing you that this area has been where alt season has started from historically. I used it from the range that we broke down from in 2017. We broke down, we made this range, and then we've continued to break down, and we since haven't managed to close above that range for Bitcoin dominance. So anywhere in this box could be the start of alt season. That was alt season in 2017, or the second alt season. That was alt season in 2021. That's what I think is coming here for alt season at some point soon. If we could squeeze and touch that box, that's what it's been historically anyway. So that's why that area is there like that. That would probably coincide with Bitcoin dropping to anywhere between 100 and then 93, 97. I think 97 is like a decent target for Bitcoin. And I think alts come a little bit further than that percentage-wise. Like if XRP goes to, for example, from here, just like the high 280s, that would make high 180s, sorry, let's say that's a 14% move from here. If ETH goes to around, XRP could come a little bit lower than that, honestly. It could come to like mid 180s, low 180s, could even come a little bit lower. ETH is at 2.6. If it comes down to like 2-ish K, 2.2, 2K, just say like 2.150, that's 18%. And then Bitcoin, for example, if it comes down to like 97, it's more like 9% to 97, and maybe like 13, 14 if it goes to 93. But then I think ETH probably goes to 2K, or maybe slightly below that, 1.9 something if Bitcoin comes down to 93. These are ifs. I'm giving you these ish price targets, and that would mean that Bitcoin drops less percentage-wise than alts, which would probably squeeze dominance up to that area of the potential alt season starting box, and then everything would start to align for me. Then we'd have the liquidity swept across altcoins, we'd have it swept on Bitcoin, we'd have Bitcoin dominance hitting the box that gives us the green light for alt season. And what you'll also see then is this, the last little thing I'm going to show you today, because I don't want to be talking too much, because I feel like I've shown you everything that I need to show you, and I try and reiterate this message, but I'm hoping I'm making it super clear. ETH, look at the open interest is still huge on ETH. When we had this dip the other day, I'll show you, we did go negative for a little bit in terms of aggregated funding, which means that more people were going short, but now we're climbing a bit and people are going long again, and these people I think will be flushed out, and that will take us down to the lows probably into that liquidity. But what we do see is that because open interest is high as it's ever been, even during this push up, yes, you could argue that there's some you could argue that people are long too, that this the funding was like red and green, meaning that there's just a shitload of open interest, whilst also premium is negative. So I would suggest that during this move up, it was mainly, especially during like this area here, I'll show you where. It's hard to just like draw and show because I'm looking at my eyes and I haven't. Like all this to even like to here, really, I'd say that all that period, 40 days, more people were going short and open interest was rising. So I would say that they will get squeezed out when ETH starts to get these closes. But could we just not definitely, but could we get like this first? Down to like this two sort of K level, find some support maybe in this area here. It could come as low as this area here before, where this move started. That would really fake a lot of people out, and then we bounce, and then probably more aggressive bounce like that. If we start to it'll chop up probably, and then when we get those closes that we're talking about, boom, I think we'll really rock it. And I think ETH goes to 10 to 15K faster than people think, based on the amount of open interest that's on ETH right now. That's what I can see coming, and that also would align with Bitcoin squeezing in Bitcoin dominance and flushing out of all this liquidity. It would be bloody perfect. That's a perfect scenario, but it doesn't mean we get it. So I hope this has made it a bit more clear. I feel like I've just rambled a little bit, but I would like to know if you guys understand what I'm saying in the comments. I keep getting loads and loads of questions over on X, like as if I've changed, like as if, oh, do I still think the flush is coming because we pumped up yesterday, because I made the video yesterday about Bitcoin could go to all-time highs. Yes, I think it's coming, but I don't necessarily need to be right. I don't know if I will be right on that. The next stage is what I'm most certain about, is that we're going to go significantly higher for crypto. I am in the camp that we flush because of the liquidity below us and because of what I've just shown you with gold, equities, structure in crypto. That's what I think. The fact that we're also on this rally, look, even Bitcoin on this last little push is nearly at the same level in terms of RSI as it was back there at 110. Doesn't show me that there is a lot of strength in the market right now. It shows me that too many people have bought and we're only at 107k, which is not all-time highs. And if we're getting into those overbought areas, it should be when we're testing those all-time high levels, in my opinion. That's what I think. So I hope it will make sense to you guys. If you enjoyed the video and you want to trade along with me, I do have links to WEX and MEXC in the description below. If you want more ideas about what I think in terms of price action and price targets, please check out the weekly newsletter. Thank you very much to everyone who subscribes to that and reads that every week. We've got now like 2,100 weekly readers, which is fantastic. I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches my channel. If you do enjoy, please do hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. Peace up, A-Town Downs, Crypto Insight UK would say.